Hey, Larry.
Geren, you missed it. We had a last-minute sponsorship today, so literally we are doing this nonstop.
Yes, we
Larry
did,
Affa.
because I asked him last night. I asked Fletch last night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. It's Friday, it's noon. That can mean only one thing. It's time for the Rotary Club of Fort Worth. Take it away, President Rachel Marker.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Fort Worth. We're so glad to have you here virtually with us today. Will you please join us in welcoming past President Fernando Costa with today's invocation, followed by our very own Wesley Gentle, who will be performing the national anthem.
Thank you, President Rachel, and good afternoon, folks. May we pray. God of grace, we thank you today for all of our blessings, including the privilege at this hour to gather with friends under the Rotary banner. God of mercy, keep us safe during the current pandemic and draw us nearer to you and to our neighbors, even as we continue to distance ourselves for the common good. God of love, give us the courage to work for justice and reconciliation in Fort Worth, across our country, and throughout our world. God of all people, we ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you so much, past President Fernando and Wesley. Now I'd like to take a moment and thank Fletcher Consulting, who is today's sponsor, and Fletch Consulting are public relations specialists who are specializing in helping clients become actively involved in their local communities. Thank you so much, Fletch, for sponsoring today's program. Next, we have Kelly Gillig, who will be owner of the Cookery Fort Worth, who will be announcing today's visiting Rotarians and guests.
Hello, I'm Rotarian Kelly Gillig, and I just wanted to welcome all visiting Rotarians and guests. If you could please share your information, such as your name, your employer, what Rotary Club you're visiting from in the chat box. I know we'd all love to say hello, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Appreciate that. And a special thank you to Michelle Krim and Jim Austin for welcoming all of our guests on virtually today before we started today's program. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Wesley Gentle once again, who will be giving today's newscast. Take it away, Wesley.
Thank you, President Rachel. So the newscast for the uninitiated is a time-honored club tradition where a very unlucky or a very shameless Rotarian recaps the week's news with a gratuitous amount of tongue-in-cheek. While I'm not usually one to shy from this ignoble opportunity, I found it really hard, honestly, to laugh these days. I can't find humor in the present pandemic, which has unhinged our economy and disproportionately hurt our most vulnerable, claiming nearly 115,000 American lives to date, as I understand, nor in the disgusting act of injustice that took the life of George Floyd, which for so many of us and our friends, family, and neighbors has made tangible the fear of violence and persecution experienced daily by anyone whose skin is not what we call white. I hoped in vain that I could get a few good-natured chuckles in about our nation's emergent Space Force, but Netflix recently proved that not even our finest comedians could land a joke about the current administration's attempts to cash in on Star Wars nostalgia. Even our Rotary Club has felt the weight of current events. President Rachel has led this club bravely through an unimaginable year, with great help from President-elect Carlo, Treasurer Courtney, the entire board. I'm grateful that we're moving past these challenges, but I'm not ready to make light of them. I'd rather leave that to our past presidents and roasters extraordinaire during the June 26th passing of the gavel. But while I was preparing for this newscast, I confided all this to a close friend in an email, and I was somewhat dismayed that this was their only response. So, in response to that, I guess all I have to say is this. As I scroll through this weekend news, searching for jokes in the darkness of insanity, I ask myself, is anything good? Some answer with deafening silence. Wow. Internet trolls scream profanity, and each time I think I'm shutting down, my screen lights up again. What's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing? Oh, oh, oh. What's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing? My Facebook feed, my Twitter page, YouTube and LinkedIn and TikTok. All I see is pain and rage. But where are the pictures with silly words? Where are the short looping videos of people grooving? Oh, nobody says grooving anymore. But each time I think I'm shutting down, my screen lights up again. What's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing? Oh, what's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing? Do you want a joke? I've got none. Do you want a rhyme? Well, there's one. What's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing? Oh, oh, what's so funny about memes, puns, and viral dancing?
You want to be here?
Thank you, Wesley, for today's newscast. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today is a historic day for our Rotary Club because we are about to go live on Facebook. I'm pushing the button now, and we are going live. And so for all of you on Facebook, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for being here, and we hope that you enjoy today's Rotary Club of Fort Worth presentation with Secretary Pete Geren. President Rachel, back to you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone in our Facebook family. Next up, we have grant presentations. For the last few weeks, we have been honoring those organizations who have received grants by the Rotary Club of Fort Worth. We have given out over $70,000 worth of grants to community organizations, including 17 different organizations starting in mid-April. So these funds come out of our Children's Endowment Fund and also our regular endowment fund, and can only be used on community initiatives to support children, and are completely separate from our business accounts used in club operations. Now today we are honored to have two of those recipients with us here today. First up, we have Kayla Mosley, Community Engagement with Tarrant County Homeless Coalition. We're honored to present to you today, Kayla, a check for $2,500 for the Tarrant County Homeless Coalition. Would you please share a little bit about the TCHC and what you plan on doing with those funds? Kayla, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla Mosley with the Tarrant County Homeless Coalition. Thank you so much for having us today and for letting me share a little bit about what we are doing specifically with these funds. So the Homeless Coalition coordinates the community response to homelessness by acting as a catalyst for community change. So we do all of this through a shared vision of a vibrant community where individuals and families has a place to call home and the resources to live their best life. So with these funds, we will be working together with over 35 partner agencies and our business community for an education campaign launching later this year to increase the understanding of homelessness, including the impact it has on our personal spaces, businesses, economic, and neighborhood growth. So the business community specifically will not only impact us here at TCHC alone, but is intended to positively impact our partners as well by driving resources and mobilizing people to further their individual missions as well. So thank you so much again for your support, and we really hope to see you all in person again soon.
Thank you so much, Kayla, and also for the Tarrant County Homeless Coalition for everything that you're doing in our community. We truly appreciate you. Next we have our Rotarian, Susan Wood, CEO and Executive Director for the Hope Center for Autism. We're honored today to give Susan a check for $2,097 for the Hope Center for Autism. Susan, would you please share a little bit more about your organization as well as let us know what you're going to be doing with those funds? Please take it away, Susan.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. Can y'all hear me okay? The Hope Center for Autism believes that everyone can learn, no matter your diagnosis. They just learn differently. So we at the Hope Center teach to the person with autism's learning style specifically. We have just opened up a year ago this month, we started a small private school. So we are now a one-on-one therapy center and a school. We're serving 10 children in a year-round school setting. And the interesting $2,097, the amount will be for iPads for the children. And so that's why it's an unusual number. Instead of a rounded off pretty number, it's 97. So that will purchase 4 iPads for the children to do therapy. Some will be used in the classroom. We are very unique. We don't have programs in place that we put children into. We build programs around each child individually, so that one child has their program and their learning perfect for what they need, what they enjoy, what they dislike, what their learning style is. So it's our job to find out all of those things and create this beautiful program for each child. This week, we had the pleasure of a child beginning to speak. And that was what we do this for. She said my name, actually. It wasn't the way we would say it, but that was her attempt. So it's a little bit hard to describe what that's like. That a child that's never spoke begins to understand that words have meaning and there's function to the words. And so I have the best job in the world, and I am so blessed that there are so many good people in the world and so many good people in Fort Worth that support us. We have been through a struggle with this COVID-19. It was very difficult, and because of people like the Rotary and this gift that you are giving them, we're going to be able to keep going. And you know, we're rebuilding and putting it back together. And we went from laying off 17 employees to bringing back 18. So that's a win for us. And I just, you know, I can't say thank you enough for what all of you do individually and as a group. It's just amazing the work that you all do for our community, and I thank you for that. So anyway, God bless you, and thanks for everything.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for the Hope Center for Autism and everything that you do for our community. A big thank you again to Kayla and Susan for all the work in the community. And I have to say a little special shout out to Kayla Mosley. Kayla, a very special thank you on behalf of the Rotary Club for all the work that you've been doing to help us out with the Rotograph. You've taken on as a volunteer role, and just wanted to say thank you so much for that, as well as stepping up your leadership for putting together the incoming Rotaract Club that will soon be launching for our club for young professionals between the ages of 18 and 35. A special thank you, Kayla, for all your help, and look forward to watching you become a great Rotarian in the future. So thank you. Next up, we're going to move on. We got 50 things every Rotarian should know. We are on week 41, 42, and 43. Trying to wrap it up before I end up my year. So the first thing is 41, the group study exchange. This is when teams of professionals get together and they do deep dives about different parts of countries, and they are able to serve as ambassadors of goodwill. Week 42 is health, hunger, and humanitarian grants, something that we have obviously taken part of today. Next is week 43, and that is matching grants, which again, our club has been fortunate enough to have the district grant for some of the grant recipients that you have heard about over the last few weeks. And as always, if you have an interest in learning more about any of these items, please consult this week's Rotograph for a full explanation on each of those topics. Next up, we have Secretary Christy Eckler, Vice President of Advancement with the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, AKA the BRIT, with some first readings. Christy, please take it away.
It's an exciting day, President Rachel. We have one first reading, Patrick Lewis, proposed by President-elect Carlo Capua. Technology, classification as technology. Company is Ultimate Software, where he's the Strategic Development Manager.
And if no written objection is received in the Rotary office by next Thursday, June 18th at 5 o'clock, his proposal will be given second readings and voted on by the club at the next week's meeting. Back to you, Secretary Christy.
So very excited to have this happening on a virtual meeting. We have 3 new members to introduce today. Julie Butner, the CEO of Tarrant Area Food Bank, proposed by Charles Boswell. Julie Wilson, founder and consultant of Reasons Group, proposed by Sergeant-at-Arms Sean Snell. Then we have Blair Hancock, Territory Sales Manager for NSK Limited, proposed by President-elect Carlo Capua. Charles Boswell will introduce Julie Butner. Sergeant-at-Arms Sean Snell will introduce you to Julie Wilson. And President-elect Carlo Capua will introduce you to Blair Hancock. I hand it over to you, Charles.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Julie Butner. Since January, Julie has served as the new president and CEO of the Tarrant Area Food Bank, succeeding Bo Soderberg, who led our organization for 22 years, and who also served as president of this Rotary Club several years ago. Julie came to Fort Worth to attend TCU, where she graduated with a degree in nutrition and coordinated dietetics. Following graduation, Julie embarked on a period of distinguished service to the United States Army. After her stint in the service, she entered civilian life and spent most of her career working for large multinational corporations in the healthcare industry, specifically focused on food and nutrition, and has held a variety of operations and business development positions. In her personal life, she's an avid yoga practitioner, tennis player, and long-distance runner. And we are lucky to have her at the food bank leading us through this troubled time, and lucky to have her joining our club. So please meet Julie.
Thank you, Charles. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here and very excited about joining this prestigious group, the Rotary Club of Fort Worth. I was told by Rachel earlier this week that I needed to keep my introduction very brief. I think she told me 30 seconds, which is really, really brief. But a couple of factoids that you may not know about me. I think in light of all of the events that have taken place in the last 2 weeks, I would tell you that I have been tear gassed, and it is not any fun. It can be quite painful. It opens up all of your body glands and you tear up, which is why it's called tear gas. But you also have things that come out of your nose and saliva that comes out of your mouth. So not very pleasant, but an experience that the military requires every Army officer to have in order to recognize the value of your personal protective equipment. And I will tell you that if I'm ever around tear gas, I'm either running or I'm putting on some PPE very, very quickly. The second factoid I'll give you is that I have rappelled off of the TCU football stadium. And if you've never had a chance to do that, if they ever offer it in a continuing education class, I highly recommend it. It's one of my all-time favorite experiences here in Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you again for the introduction, and I look forward to meeting everybody on a more personal basis when we can meet in person.
This is Sean. I guess I'll now go and introduce Julie Wilson. It's my pleasure to be introducing her. So many of you already know Julie, and there's so much to say, but so little time right at the moment. I can let you know that she's originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico. She and her husband and their family moved here in '86 when TCU recruited Geren as a ranch management professor. That same year, she joined and eventually formed the well-known Region and Wilson ad and PR agency, where she became CEO and co-owner. That was sold to Gray Worldwide around '98, a transaction that netted her Deal Maker of the Year. And she continued working with Gray, I believe, as a divisional president, and commuted to New York City for a few years. Somewhere in there, she was also concurrently operating, I think, a dozen franchises, including Cold Stone Creamery, Supercuts, Pro Cuts. Around 2001, she formed the Reasons Group. And I think one of her clients, Chesapeake Energy, knew a good thing when they saw it and tapped her as their local officer. And of course, many of us know her from representing Chesapeake for so many years. Somewhere in there, again, she always finds time to be a great community volunteer. It's a very long list. Some of the more recent include immediate past chair of Visit Fort Worth and current chair of the YMCA of Metropolitan Fort Worth. We can see why she frequently shows up on the 400 most influential list. She and her husband, Gary, again, reside on their cattle ranch in Johnson County. She has 2 grown children. You'll see them in the photo, Major Tyler Wilson and Abilene. And he has two children, a daughter, Paige, and a son, Gus, and then daughter, Reagan, shown in the photograph. She was on a Sister Cities trip to Japan. She lives in Atlanta. Coincidentally, my niece, Carolyn, served as a Navy fighter pilot with Tyler there. They served together flying F-18s. We're super proud of those 2 kids, and I'm also very proud to introduce you officially to Julie Wilson, new Rotarian.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate the warm welcome. I guess maybe the interesting fact about me you alluded to is that while so many of you know me as a city girl involved in corporate life by day, by night I'm a country girl living out on the farm. My husband and I have been married 45 years this summer. He's a cattle rancher, so we've had quite a life raising the cattle and also horses, chickens, goats, pigs for a little while, and my favorite, miniature donkeys. So I love having the dual existence, and I'm very appreciative of the warm welcome here into Rotary. Thank you, Sean.
And I have the honor of wrapping us up for the new members today. This is Carlo Capua. I am so excited to welcome a dynamic, fine young man, Blair Hancock. He is the Territory Sales Manager for NSK Limited. And something you'll appreciate about Blair is he is a second-generation Rotarian. His father, Brad Hancock, was a longtime member and professor in the Entrepreneurship Center at TCU. Blair followed in his footsteps by coming to Rotary, also is a proud TCU graduate of 2013 from the business school. Something very interesting about Blair is that if you remember the date, March 14th of this year, it was the day before the city started to completely close. And fortunately for Blair, about a year before, he and his then fiance picked that date to have their wedding in the Fort Worth Club, in the Horizon Room where we usually meet in person. So he potentially had the very last pre-COVID wedding in possibly the United States before things shut down. So I'll turn it to Blair, over to Blair, and we're very, very happy to have this dynamic young man with us.
Thank you, Carlo. Yeah, as Carlo said, it's been a long time coming, I think, for me to get involved with Rotary in an official capacity. I've had fun over the years being engaged through my dad and even being a guest of Carlo in the past. But yeah, excited to make it official and be there here in the next few weeks to celebrate that officially in person and the transition with Carlo. As Carlo said, I think probably the most relevant and fun fact or factoid to share about me is a recent wedding and one that we snuck in just in time before COVID. My wife actually works at the Fort Worth Club. She's in the athletic facility. And she shared with me that the first wedding since our wedding, March 14th, will actually be tomorrow. So we had quite the streak there going of being the one and only wedding. So anyway, excited to be a member and grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome new members. Normally you would get your badge, pin, and certificate from President Rachel, but they will be mailed to you. President Rachel, back to you.
And a special welcome, Julie, and Blair. So glad to have you here. And thank you to Charles, Sean, and President-elect Carlo for recruiting our new Rotarians. Thank you so much. I was very excited that we had a total of 7 new members at this week's orientation. So for all of the Rotarians on the phone and all of our guests, if you're interested in joining, talk to a Rotarian. We'd love to have you. Next up is our member spotlight. Every week we've been taking a few moments and highlighting some of our members. First, we have Norm Robbins, who has been a member since 2015. Norm, will you share a little bit about yourself and why you joined Rotary, please?
Sure, Rachel. I joined Rotary in 2015 because I wanted to join a group that does good things for the community and expand my network. Now, since Secretary Geren is our speaker today, a little known fact about me is I've personally known Secretary Geren since I was in the 1st grade when I became Secretary Geren's first campaign operative for his congressional campaign. My best friend Mason is Secretary Geren's nephew, so one day after elementary school, I took it upon myself to help my best friend's uncle's campaign by riding my bike around the neighborhood to destroy the yard signs of Secretary Geren's opponent. Now, my actions that day had to have worked because Secretary Geren did win his election shortly after. My greatest extravagance before the coronavirus was eating at restaurants with my wife and kids, but these days it's picking up dinner or having dinner delivered to my wife and kids. Since I'm a CPA in public accounting, the coronavirus has affected my business to date by giving me a busy season that never ends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Norm. Next, we have Celia Esparza, President and CEO of United Community Centers, and she's been a member since 2003.
Hello, everybody. My name is Celia, and I am President and CEO of United Community Centers. I've been a Rotarian since 2003, and the reason I joined was because being new to that position, however, I've been a Fort Worthian all my life, I needed to get to know people and to get them to know who United Community Centers was. So that was why I joined, or why they suggested I join. What am I doing? What are one of my extravaganzas is I like to hang out with my husband, and we like to travel. And probably the two most favorite places we like to go to are New Orleans and Boston. My extravaganza is I love sports, and so we go to a lot of sports games. NFL, hockey, and baseball are our favorites. So if we're not going to the games, we're watching them on TV, and that has kind of been null and void the last couple of months, and it's been kind of hard at the house. Since the virus has hit, I think one thing that has changed in my life, two ways. Personal life, my son, who we had been empty nesters for 7 years, came back home and has been with us since law school went online. So I pray that schools go back to in-person sessions, because he needs to go back and live on his own. And then work-wise, I think the thing that has changed here is our fundraising activities. Because we are a nonprofit, we rely on support from so many people. We had to cancel our golf tournament, which was going to be in March, and we postponed it till August, and we hope that we'll be able to have it. And then working with our families at our 3 community centers has also changed. We focus on literacy, but because we work with the Fort Worth ISD and everything went to online platform, what we've kind of had to do is tweak it. We still do focus on literacy, but we're having to teach and work with our families on how to work on this social media or education new platform on literacy or education as a whole. So IT solutions and hotspots and how they work has been kind of our new thing here. We did just start opening up UCC for in-person classes June the 8th. So we have 3 community centers right now working on literacy with a group of 10 kids per classroom. And it's going well, but we're still having to work with the families to educate them on how to do this new online platform. So thank y'all all, appreciate it, and hope to see y'all soon in person. Have a great day.
Thank you, Celia. Next up, we have Lewis Wall, who's an attorney and shareholder with Borland Wall and Wenzel Law Firm. Lewis has been a member since 2000, that's 20 years. So Lewis, take it away.
Thank you, President Rachel. I joined Rotary, of course, like she said, in the year 2000 at the invitation of my law partner, Mike Borland, who was my mentor and the founder of my law firm. Interestingly enough, at that time, Pete Geren was president. Welcome back, President Pete, today. After 40 plus years of law practice, it was really good to me, but I decided to retire in order to be able to devote some time to travel, like a lot of people. The law practice just really didn't permit that much, and I wanted to do it while I was still on my feet and healthy. And it seems like only yesterday, in early January, my wife and I were strolling the streets of Old Prague. And of course, since that time, COVID and the lockdowns have happened, and several trips have already been canceled or at least postponed. I hope to be able to resume them soon, though, when the economy reopens and we're permitted to travel again. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks to everyone for allowing me to continue to be in such a great organization as Rotary Club of Fort Worth.
Thank you so much, Lewis. And next up, a very special man to me, and that would be Mr. Bill Lawrence, principal with the Lawrence and Associates, and he's been a member of Rotary since 1995, 25 years. Bill, please take it away.
Hi. Thank you, Rachel. I rejoined Rotary, as she said, in 1995 because I liked its positive culture. I've served on the board and on a number of committees, and I had the honor of chairing the program committee when Fernando was president. And I'm proud to be a Paul Harris Fellow. Rotary's four-way test syncs with my business philosophy. I founded Lawrence & Associates in 1989 to provide marketing, public relations, fundraising services. And I'm an accredited member of the Public Relations Society of America and an elected member of PRSA's College of Fellows. A fun fact about me that I was a writing extra in John Wayne's movie, The Comancheros. In the summer between my freshman and sophomore year at TCU, I headed to Moab, Utah to work in the oil patch. After working on an oil rig and setting off dynamite on a seismic crew, I learned that a Western movie was being filmed nearby. Since I'd grown up riding horses, I signed on to ride as a Comanchero. Every day was filled with riding with abandon and chase scenes. Being in a movie with John Wayne was exciting and a fun memory. As the COVID-19, it's had its normal effects on everyone, but mostly for us in business, we just added Zoom. So with that, you know, it's fun to look forward to getting back together. Also, I'd like to have an addendum here that I had the privilege of sponsoring Rachel as a member of this club. So as Carlos in his memo a few days ago saying everyone should get members, please go out there. You might find the next leader. And so thank you very much. And it's great to be a member of Rotary.
Thank you so much, Bill. Rotary changed my life, so thank you so much for introducing me to this club in particular. And thank you to all of our Rotarians today for sharing a little bit more about yourselves. We look forward to next week's as well. And now it is my pleasure to make it to the big light, the spotlight. We have today's speaker who will be introduced by John Fletcher, AKA Fletch, who's president and CEO of Fletcher Consulting Public Relations, and as we started, was a last-minute sponsor for which we are very appreciative. Fletch, please take it away.
Thank you very much, President Rachel. The word public service defines the very essence of today's speaker. After his career as an attorney and business executive, Pete Geren served as an assistant to U.S. Senator Lloyd Bentsen. Next, he served 4 years as our 12th District U.S. Congressman. He served as special assistant to the Secretary of Defense, acting Secretary of the Air Force, Undersecretary of the Army, and finally, Secretary of the Army. And he was serving on 9/11. Today, we know him as president and CEO of the Sid W. Richardson Foundation, where he provides grants to education, health, human service, and cultural nonprofits in Texas. He served there since 2010. He's been honored as a distinguished alumnus of the University of Texas and as a distinguished alumnus for public service by the University of Texas Law School. Here's a little known fact. Pete was one of the top tennis players in the entire state of Texas. When he was 14, Pete and his doubles partner, Pete Brown, we knew him as Pete and Repeat, were ranked #2 in the state of Texas. If Pete had pursued his gift of tennis, we might never have ever heard of Roger Federer and Pete Sampras. Please welcome a Fort Worth native and perennial Fort Worth public servant, the president and CEO of the Sid Richardson Foundation, our good friend, Pete Geren.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that kind introduction. When President Rachel referred to you as Fletch, I have to remark that I knew you and I've known you nearly 60 years. To me, you were Bubba, and I have a hard time calling you Fletch or John, but I appreciate the invitation. And looking at that picture of Lewis and Bill, don't we love those old Rotary pictures? So nice to remember what we looked like a long time ago. And Norm, I had no idea you were out stealing yard signs. I remembered you as a house-to-house door knocking volunteer. So let me put on the record that stealing those yard signs of my opponent was not authorized. But it is great to be back. I've loved my decades involved with Rotary. When Becky and I moved to Virginia in 2001, I went emeritus status, and we were up there for 10 years. But I still cherish so much my many years and my many friendships and associations with Rotary. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the coronavirus, and not talk to you about coronavirus from the medical perspective, the 112,000 people who have died from coronavirus and the millions who are ill. I'm going to talk to you about it from the perspective of somebody that works in the nonprofit sector. The foundation that I work for, we provide funding to nonprofits that are on the front lines of the coronavirus response. And from that perch, I see what they're doing. I see their innovation, their tireless work, but also see the needs of the people that they serve through their eyes. And they are doing yeoman's work at a very difficult time for the lives of so many. But before I talk about coronavirus, I want to stop and acknowledge the tragedy that's hanging on in the hearts and minds of all of us. The killing of George Floyd brought all of us to our knees, if not literally, certainly figuratively. And it caused all of us to look deep within ourselves and look to our leaders and look across our community and redouble our commitment to live lives, to build a community that lives out the ideals of our Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As we gather today, that challenge is heavy on the hearts of every one of us. But I do want to talk today about coronavirus, also a challenge that holds our attention every day and weighs on our hearts as well. We've seen the tragedies, the loss of life, but also the tragedies that are being suffered by those who are victims of policies that had to be put in place to save us from the spread of the virus. It's hard to talk about coronavirus today without finding yourself in the middle of a political fray. It's crazy, frankly, that even something like the coronavirus can feed the political divide that we find ourselves living with day to day. But in fact, we do. We have a president who wouldn't be caught dead with a mask. We have a challenger, Vice President Biden, who wouldn't be caught dead without a mask. I read in the paper the other day a real estate company that has offices all over America said, in the blue states, I can't find 2 to 3 people who want to go back to work. In the red states, I can't find 2 to 3 people who don't want to go back to work. It's a significant cultural divide, and the politicians have helped to deepen it, and it's not serving us well. The Star-Telegram tongue-in-cheek recently portrayed the way the politicians are characterizing it, or where many of the divisive politicians are, how they're portraying it by saying those who want to open up are sacrificing people's lives in the name of the economy, a binary choice, cash register or human beings. If only it were that simple. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the extraordinary work of our nonprofits and the dire needs they're working tirelessly to address. And I'll try to move the debate beyond human beings versus cash registers, because lives are at stake, whatever path we choose. And I'm going to urge you to wear masks when you're out and about. When I was talking to Rose Bradshaw last week, or really right after I talked to Fletch about talking to the Rotary, and walking with her through the countless number of initiatives that we see in Fort Worth. And I'll note that Rose and her community foundation have been leaders in this, bringing us all together. And all hats off to Rose and the community foundation. But as I was talking to Rose, and we were going through the many things that we see underway in our community, a scene from the movie Dunkirk popped into my mind. And I don't know how many of you have seen the movie, but I know all of you know the story. You had the British Army, 1940, trapped on the beach in France. You had 330,000 soldiers over there, counting the British and the French and other allies who were trapped there. They were encircled by the Germans and they faced annihilation. Well, the citizens of Dover got in nearly 1,000 and they became known as the little boats. It was yachts all the way down to motorboats. And they crossed the English Channel and they rescued 330,000 people off the shores of Dunkirk. And there's a scene in that movie where it's from the sky. It's the bird's eye view of the English Channel, and it shows all those little boats going across that great body of water, heading to those people on the beach. And it was that image that came to mind when I was talking about Rotary. All those little boats going across that treacherous sea to save people in dire need. And I thought that that's how I'm going to organize my talk today. I'm going to talk about the people in those boats, and I'm going to talk about the people on the beach. I'm going to talk about the people on the beach first. I want to talk about the health concerns that they have, the health concerns that they're living with. And I'd like to share with you something that was in the New York Times earlier this week. It was written by the head of the, co-written by the head of the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic, two of the most eminent healthcare institutions in the world. And they begin their piece with more than 100,000 of Americans have died of coronavirus. Beyond those deaths are other casualties of the pandemic. Americans seriously ill with other ailments who avoided care because they feared contracting the coronavirus at hospitals and clinics. The toll from their deaths may be close to the toll from COVID-19. The toll from their deaths may be close to the toll from COVID-19. The trends are clear and concerning. Government orders to shelter in place and healthcare leaders' decisions to defer non-essential care help stem the tide of the virus and were necessary. But these policies, complicated by the loss of employer-provided health insurance as people were laid off, have had the unintended effect of delaying care for some of our sickest Americans. The true cost of this epidemic will not be measured in dollars. It will be measured in human lives and human suffering. In the case of cancer, our calculations show that we can expect 250,000 additional preventable deaths annually if normal care does not resume. Outcomes will be similar to those who forego treatment for heart attacks and strokes. And what does that look like locally? I'll just give you an example from John Peter Smith, and I'm going to talk about JPS later as one of our heroes. But colonoscopies at John Peter Smith in April of 2019 were 471. In 2020, they were 11. For prostate exams in April of 2019, 460. In 2020, 149. Cancer screenings of other types, 2019, 3,473. This year, 738. Community health clinic visits in April of 2019, 52,801. 2020, 7,400. It doesn't take much imagination to know what the health effects are of that type of avoidance of screening and securing the preventive health care that we all take for granted. I want to talk about education, and I'll talk about the Fort Worth ISD. We have 84,000 kids there. 70,000 of those 84,000 are kids because they come from poor families. They qualify for free and reduced lunches. We believe, and the numbers are hard to pin down, nearly a third don't have the type of computer services at home, either the hardware or Wi-Fi, to be able to participate in tele-learning. Those kids are out of school, and those kids are not keeping up with the educational demands that we must have for them if they're going to grow as young people. The TSA, or pardon me, TEA has estimated that many of those kids, perhaps a majority of their kids, those kids will lose at least an entire year of learning because of the slide that went from beginning right after spring break, and then will go into the fall at some point on July 19. The Fort Worth ISD will decide when they will resume. But I'm going to talk also later about the Fort Worth ISD. It's so much more for those kids, particularly the poor kids, than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. going to talk about hunger in our community. Fort Worth ISD, again, most of us think of it as a place to learn. It's also the biggest food nutrition program in Fort Worth. Title I kids all across America are fed in the biggest child nutrition program in America. We think of it as bricks and mortar for school. It's also a cafeteria in Fort Worth that serves 70,000 kids. In the Fort Worth ISD alone, 70,000 kids a day. Breakfast and lunch, 2 meals a day, and a backpack to take home on weekends. So when you think about hunger in our community, you have to take note of those kids that are missing 2 meals a day. And the Fort Worth ISD and others are doing everything they can to try to make up for that gap. And I'll talk about that when we get to our heroes. You introduced Julie Butner, the Tarrant Area Food Bank. They're delivering 1.5 million meals a week in their service area right now. That's up 60% from normal times. And Julie told me that up to 40% of those people that are getting those meals, first time they've ever looked to charity. 40% of the people that have spent their lives taking care of themselves and their kids. And now they're standing in line to get a meal to feed themselves and feed their kids. And I'll talk later also about some of the heroes that are stepping in to fill the gap lost. It's unfilled because of so many of these changes that we've had to adopt. Child abuse, if you just look at the numbers, you might think, well, the numbers look pretty good. Instead of 120 reports of child abuse a week in Tarrant County, it's down to 60. And then with the chilling recognition that most child abuse happens at home. Most child abuse is reported by third parties. The biggest reporter of child abuse happens at the schoolhouse. It's teachers, it's counselors, it's coaches, it's fellow students, it's fellow parents, it's friends. And those kids aren't seeing those people. And you've heard Dr. Kaufman talk from Cook Children, that the kids that are making it to Cook Children's with child abuse are having more serious injuries, and we already have had a number of child abuse related deaths this year to equal all the child abuse deaths we had in through Cook Children's last year. Unemployment, our community has gone from 4% to 13%. And so many of those folks have lost their health insurance, exacerbating the problems we talked about a moment ago. Let me now jump to the boats. And my hat's off to Julie Butner. Tarrant Area Food Bank, I noted 1 million meals weekly. And I'm going to run through some of the coalitions that have come together. The numbers of organizations and the volunteers, we'd be here all afternoon talking about them. But let me talk about a partnership that Meals on Wheels, Catholic Charities, 60 and Better, United Way, have put together to serve isolated seniors who have had their social support systems, their nutrition systems blown up by the coronavirus limitations. 40% of those meals that they're providing, again, are to people who have never been in a charity line before. I want to raise my hat to the Fort Worth ISD. They immediately switched from cafeteria delivered meals to taking meals to the neighborhoods and have worked day and night to try to get food to those kids. The food pantries, who have been crippled because they didn't have the food supply that they were getting from grocers and they lost their volunteers, have stepped up, and the partnerships that the Tarrant Area Food Bank has with pantries are filling the needs in neighborhoods throughout. Child abuse, Alliance for Children, Cook Children's, United Way again, Fort Worth ISD, Fort Worth Police Department, Reed Fort Worth, All Church Home have launched an initiative, Community of Front Porches. They've identified 1,000 households where the kids there had fallen off the grid. We've lost touch with them through the Fort Worth ISD connections. And those organizations are literally going to go door to door, knock on doors, and check on those kids. They're not sitting back and waiting to determine what may happen to them. They're going door to door. A group of 3 is going to knock on 1,000 doors over the coming weeks. These children that aren't learning, and 25 to 30% who don't have the technology to participate in telelearning. Well, an initiative with the Fort Worth ISD and Read Fort Worth, combined with AT&T, Facebook, and area funders, have undertaken an extraordinary initiative. They are working to place hotspots and Chromebooks in 8,000 homes of Fort Worth ISD families. AT&T is offering free Wi-Fi, and Matt Rose has been a great leader in pulling that together. But a multi-million-dollar effort to bring technology into the homes of kids who live on the other side of the digital divide. JPS, they didn't sit back and just lament the fact that nobody is able to come to their hospital. They've reached out with their community clinics. And I'll mention too, in the schools, JPS has 19 school-based clinics around the county. In 2019, they were serving nearly 4,000 kids a week in those clinics. It dropped to 0. But JPS didn't sit back and wonder what was happening to those kids. They reached out through telehealth and have now gotten it up to around nearly 1,000 kids a week are being served through telehealth. And they have rebuilt a system around telehealth. So those patients who haven't been coming in, who can't come in, who can't be case managed in person, they're case managing them at home. People who need to be case managed for diabetes, case managed for mental health. JPS is using telehealth and outreach throughout the community to reach those people and make sure that those health concerns don't turn into life threats. A wonderful initiative by Child Care Associates and Campfire and Education First Steps. They set up a program to provide child care for all of our first responders. They couldn't stay home. Our first responders couldn't stay home, whether it was in the hospitals or in the clinics, or our firefighters or our police officers. They had to be out there, and somebody had to take care of their kids. And those 3 organizations came together to make sure that those first responders could leave their kids with them and do it safely. Catholic Charities has come up with an initiative. They currently, or before the coronavirus, case managed about 1,200 poor families. They're stepping up in partnerships with Meals on Wheels and Catholic Charities, and Tarrant Area Food Bank and other partners, United Way. They're going to up their service to 7,000 poor families, provide them financial assistance so that they can keep their utilities going, so they can pay their rent, so make sure that they have the food they need, case manage them with counseling, and help them with their children. Meals on Wheels is now serving 3,000 homebound families a day. They served 111,000 meals in the month of May, and they've got 200 volunteers who are down there every day. And the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department is helping them go into the homes where the people are ill and the caseworkers can't enter because of health concerns. And I want to share with you a small boat, a little boat. At the very beginning of this, end of spring break for kids, I got a cold call from a person I didn't know. She was home on spring break. She was a senior in college in California, and she lives in Fort Worth. She said, I want to help. I want to provide meals to first responders. Can you tell me how I can do it? And I said, well, there are a lot of people trying to do that. I could try to connect you with them. But she said, I want to start an effort myself. And what can I do? And I said, well, for our foundation to provide you funding, you have to get a 501c3. So I thought that would be the last I heard of her. She called back a couple of weeks later, and she said, I'm bringing an organization called Feed the Front to Fort Worth. Here's the 501c3, and will you give us money? We're going to buy meals from restaurants so we can help them stay afloat. And we're going to take those meals to first responders and deliver it to them in their workplace. And that woman is leading an effort that up till now has served 2,300 meals to individual first responders over the last few weeks. One of those little boats that's making a difference. The tales are inspiring. The tales are extraordinary, and you can't watch it. You can't see it without being inspired. Miles Foundation is working with Workforce Solutions to find jobs for those who have been furloughed. And what are the big challenges ahead of us? I mentioned telehealth is one of the great opportunities, but the digital divide that we talked about means that digital divide will leave a lot of those same families on the other side of the healthcare. Web-based learning, it's part of the future, but we've got 25% and up to 50% in some counties of people living on the wrong side of the digital divide. We've got to fill the hole in the education for those kids who are falling behind. We can't keep them in school till they're 19 or till they're 20. We've got to figure out a way through summer school and some of the innovative things that Dr. Scribner and his team are trying to do at the Fort Worth ISD to make up that loss. And we need Rotarians. We need all of you putting your thinking hats on, your creative hats on, and your volunteer hours to figuring out a way to get those kids caught up, get them back on track. Last year, 33% of those kids read on grade level by third grade. We can only guess what that number is going to be next spring without Herculean efforts. And I lay that challenge in front of all of us as Rotarians and all of us as citizens of Fort Worth. In closing, my goal today was to reframe this debate. It's not cash registers against human beings. We got human beings on both sides of this debate. And we've got heroes, nonprofits and volunteers that are out there doing everything they can. And many of those, the Rotarians are on the call today, are among those. And again, Julie Butner, what an extraordinary job she's doing. But the room is filled, or the Zoom screen is filled with those of you who are doing the heavy lifting as well. But our kids are falling behind in their education. Their moms and dads, they need jobs. Can't refer to it just as the economy. It's moms and dads who need jobs. And these moms and dads need childcare so that they can go to work. Many of our kids are not safe. They're not safe at home, and they're hungry. Our elderly are cut off from their support systems, from their family, and too many of them are hungry as well. And too many among us, too many of our neighbors are not receiving the health care that they need. And more have been put into that category because of the loss of health insurance. So what can we do? Well, we are reopening, but we've got to do everything we can to make that reopening as careful and as safe as we possibly can. A person from the CDC said yesterday, if all of us would wear masks for just 3 weeks, we could knock out this virus. In Fort Worth, I remember when I was a young person, people said, Fort Worth is a little city with a great big heart. Fort Worth is a city that looks after our neighborhood and looks after our neighbors. Fort Worth is a town, we look out for each other. And what we need to do today to look out for each other is when we're out and about, we wear masks. It doesn't protect us, it protects our neighbors. I've heard some say, well, isn't it just like motorcycles and helmets? You know, it's a free choice. Well, there's a big difference there. The person who doesn't wear a helmet when he or she rides a motorcycle is endangering his life. When we don't wear a mask, it's not our life we are endangering. We're endangering the lives of others. So I urge you, when you're out and about, when you leave today, put on that mask, be a good neighbor, and in the gentle Fort Worth way, encourage others to do the same. Well, thank all of you for letting me join you. I appreciate, Bubba, the invitation. I really thank you. And it's a privilege to have the job that I have and be able to support the heroes and the nonprofits that are out there making a difference at perhaps the most critical time in the last 50 years of our nation's history. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary, Congressman, past President Pete, for today's message. Absolutely beautiful. What a great presentation. And thank you for reminding us of the power that we all hold with each of ourselves. So thank you so much. As you know, it is very much so. As you know, it is a tradition of the Rotary Club of Fort Worth to donate a book to the Fort Worth Public Library in honor of your program here today. And this book plate with your name on it will be placed in that book. I'm sure you have a few of those. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for agreeing to stay around. We will make sure and get you off the call by 1:10. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up with some speaker notes. Thank you again. We really appreciate your program today. All right, next, we have only 14 days until our annual roast. So on June 26th, be sure and do an RSVP to the Rotary office for food, and we definitely need a guest count. So we are limited to the number of folks that we can have at our very first meeting in person. We will also, again, be doing this via Zoom option and probably a Facebook option as well. So remember that elevators are limited, but we do need to have reservations by Wednesday, the week before. Next up, we have our next week's speaker is Mr. Phil Green, Chairman and CEO of Cullen Frost Bank, and he's going to be discussing frost culture in action. And as always, dues are now due, so please get those dues in. We truly appreciate it. We have over 80 members so far in our first couple of weeks, and we truly appreciate your membership in our club. And lastly, as we all know, it's important to stay connected. Social distancing does not mean emotional distancing. Reach out to your fellow Rotarians, other friends and colleagues. We know how important it is to stay connected with one another. And lastly, a special thank you to all of our Rotarians, our new Rotarians, and all of our guests for being here today. And a special thank you to John Fletcher with Fletcher Consulting for sponsoring today. And so with no further ado, cheers, ciao, hasta luego. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. We'll leave the meeting open for just a few minutes. And thanks to everybody on Facebook for watching. What a great message from Secretary Geren. And feel free to forward and share to other people. You know, here in Fort Worth, we have a giant marina of boats just waiting to cross that big pond and pick up and help the people that need it the most. So thanks again for coming, everybody.